This is the Equid E-Commerce Show with your host, Jesse Ness, along with Richard O'Tay.
All right, Richie, it's that day again. It's been quite a while here, actually, since we've done a pod. It's good to see you on camera again.
Yeah, you actually got a vacation.
I did. Yeah, I did not answer. I didn't really answer email for 2 weeks. It was awesome. I really need to do that more often. So anyway, but I'm back, refreshed, ready to talk some more e-commerce. Today, actually pretty interesting because we generally talk about, getting started. How do you get ramped up? What kind of marketing tactics to get you to your first sale, first 100 sales, first $1 million, et cetera, et cetera. So today, I think it's interesting. We're going to kind of flip the script and start with the exit in mind. So I think it'll give everybody a little fresh perspective on running their business from the exit first. So with that, why don't we bring in our guest, Joe Valley from Quiet Light Brokerage. Joe, tell us about your book.
Hey, Jesse. Hey, Richard. Thanks for having me on, guys. Appreciate it.
Of course. Thanks for coming.
Of course, the moment you asked me to start speaking, somebody delivers and a dog starts barking. Welcome to the world of operating at home, folks. The book is called The Exitpreneur's Playbook, and it's designed for anybody that runs an online business, no matter what stage they're at. And technically, it's really not just for online sellers, because it's the playbook for online sellers and how to operate and grow and exit their business at a time and price to a buyer they choose. But it's the playbook. So in my view, the people that are looking to buy a business, that have bought it and given me feedback, these are the actual smarter ones, because they're finding ways to get instant equity in buying a business for those that don't really understand how to do certain things to make sure it's getting maximum value. Me personally, look, I'm an entrepreneur, just like you guys, just like everybody listening. I've built, bought, sold a half dozen companies of my own, self-employed since 1997. I sold my last e-commerce business in 2010. Well, it seems like a long time ago now. And then I joined the team at Quiet Light when it was just three of us. Over the last decade and almost 11 years now, I've personally sold about 100 million in total transactions. And through the team, we've helped facilitate another $500 million in online exits for folks. So, I've talked to individual entrepreneurs. I've had over 8,000 one-on-one conversations, and it's been awesome and painful all at the same time, because there's so much emotion that goes into having conversations when, some of them are desperate and some of them are hard to get through to. And it's, a life-changing number for most of them. So I just couldn't keep having those conversations. So I just put it all down in a book that I think people can pick up, grab a beer, whiskey, whatever their drink of choice is every now and then, and pop into a chapter and get motivated more than anything else, no matter what size business. I think that when they get motivated, when they start to understand the real value of what they have, they get motivated and you get over those hard days a little bit better. And we all have those hard days as entrepreneurs. So we launched in June, and I'm excited that it's going well, and we're getting good feedback and helping as many people as possible.
That's awesome. And now when you have these conversations, you can now refer to, well, in my book, in chapter 7, I discuss this particular thing, and you should really be doing your homework,
It's amazing. I had a conversation yesterday, guys, with somebody I've been speaking to for 3.5 years.
Yeah.
And you'd think after 3.5 years that he'd get some of the things that we talk about. He runs a business that is very, very seasonal. He did $7.5 million in basically 2.5 months in 2020, $7.5 million in revenue. He almost had to file for bankruptcy twice in 2021. And we got the books from him yesterday and, went through them. And it would be one of the epic failure stories in the book that I go through, which is just a shame. And he said to me, he said, Joe, I heard you on the XYZ podcast too, talking about, the book. I'm like, well, clearly you didn't buy it, right? It was a hard conversation. Super, super nice guy, doing amazing things and helping a lot of people with his product, but not taking care of the basics things that can help him change his family and generations of his family for years. So it's kind of a shame at the same time.
Yeah.
Well, it also proves another point too, that you can have information And if you don't use the information, it doesn't matter, right?
Yeah.
Especially in the world right now where we're bombarded with it, where there's information overload. And if there's an information overload, there's a attention deficit. And not only do you have to find the right stuff, pay attention to the right stuff, but then apply the right stuff. So I like how you even call it a playbook, because it's not, you know, it's not a checklist. You gotta go through this. And in a playbook, in my opinion, I keep thinking of sports, like you go over it and over and over. I'd imagine you would recommend people even reading it again and again. So
yeah, definitely. Definitely. Yeah. There, as you said, there's so many distractions, information overload these days. I've just, and I know we're talking about business and entrepreneurs and exiting and all this other stuff in my book, but I just did a magical thing a couple of weeks ago. And that is that I open my email inbox like once a day. The rest of the time it's closed, it's shut down. I don't have any more pop-ups anymore. I don't have Twitter feeds or anything like that. And I'm just so much more focused and streamlined and getting done what I have to get done. And I block my time. You know, I read The One Thing years ago, and I loved it when I read it. And then like life happens, you get away from that one thing that really worked well, and getting back to it now just gives me peace of mind and focus. And I'm just getting so much more done in so much less time without those distractions.
Very jealous. I don't know if I can quite go to that, but yeah. I mean, I love the concept, but yeah, I'm pretty tethered to this.
Coming from a guy who was just away on vacation for 2 weeks and didn't check his email once.
Oh,
So
it was fantastic, but there was a pile of work there when I got back. But yeah. So Joe, let's think about some of the playbook items here that we can give people a taste of. And actually, we talked a little bit about getting your books in order, which is, you know, we talked pre-call here a little bit about nobody likes accounting. It's boring.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's brutal, but it is a necessary piece of the puzzle. And maybe you can shed a little more light on it and try to give somebody a little more motivation to get their books in order. And
gosh, we're going to start with the thing that people hate most.
I know that was a bad intro, but we were just there. It was like
I fell asleep in accounting class. I literally fell asleep. I went to Northeastern, and you know, it was one of these big auditorium type things. And it was accounting class and probably 200 people in it. My head is down on the desk. I'm drooling. You know, the entire class walks out. The whole new class is walking in, and I wake up, you know, startled. And I'm like, oh God, this is awful. So embarrassing. I had to sneak out. So before we go into that boring stuff, let's talk about the basic one thing that somebody should do. So, you know, people say, well, when should people start thinking about their exit? You know, and you hear the old saying, you should start with the end in mind. And I think that's a total bunch of bull, because all you're trying to do when you start is bootstrap and survive and keep the wheels on the bus. And until you know you've got some traction and the wheels aren't falling off, do you pop your head up and say, wow, this is kind of cool. I was in a mastermind. They're talking about, you know, potentially exiting, and that guy sold his business for $1 million, or that one sold for $500,000, and that one for $5 million, and it starts to get kind of interesting. So the most basic thing I think that people should really do first is really simple. It's set a goal, right? Because if you're traveling to Boise, Idaho, and you live somewhere in Ohio, and you open up Google Maps and you put in Boise, but Google can't figure out where you are right now, you don't know, they won't know how to, it won't help you get there. So you've got to set a goal first. And I'm not talking about, I want to sell my business for $1 million. I'm talking about, I want to sell my business for $1 million in the first quarter of 2023. And when I do, I will feel unburdened because I'm out of debt and my kids' college is paid for, and I get to spend more time with my family and do it again with less stress and more money, right? Those types, dollars, date, and feeling. And I'd be hypocritical if I didn't do that myself, but I do it myself. It's my screensaver, right? So you gotta, I think, first set those goals so that you have something to strive for. It's not just to be self-employed and leave your day job. It's a financial and freedom thing that you've got to strive for. And that's the first step that I think people should take, not, getting their books in order. They absolutely have to have their books in order for the second step, which is once you have a goal in mind and how much you want to sell this business for and when. And by the way, if you're having a good time when you get there, just move the goalpost. You don't have to sell your business. But then you've got to do what, I say on the cover of the book, reverse engineer a pathway to that goal. You absolutely cannot do that with books that are a mess, right? The guy that I just talked about that did $7.5 million, his books are a total disaster. And even if he was profitable, which he's not, sadly, it would take an awful lot of effort and work to get those books in order. And if he just wanted to sell right away, and he wants to, right? Because it's a very seasonal business. This is August that we're recording this. He needs to really get this sold before October 15th. It takes a little bit of time to get a business sold and closed, due diligence and asset purchase agreements and all that other stuff. We wouldn't make it, we wouldn't, the odds of making it happen and happen well would be much tougher. But you got to have clear books, not necessarily clean books, but clear books. And that just simply means QuickBooks or Xero. Hire an e-commerce bookkeeper to do it. Don't be foolish enough to do it yourself. If you're not good at it and you hate it, guess what? You're not going to do it well. So, for less than a new car payment or a lease on a really nice car payment, you can have a off the charts good e-commerce bookkeeper and probably a fractional CFO that would do all that stuff for you. So you got to get that right. Because then what we're going to have you do is you got to calculate your what's called the seller's discretionary earnings. So you know what your business is worth today. I don't care if it's a $500,000 business, Jesse. If somebody's doing $300,000 in revenue, it's worth something. I can tell you right now, odds are, if they're doing, I've done this enough times, that if they're doing $300,000 in revenue, if things are good, they're probably making $60,000 a year in discretionary earnings. And their business is probably going to be worth 180 to 240, right? Maybe a little less, who knows? No two businesses are alike. That's the key thing. But you got to set that goal, dollars, date, and feeling, and then reverse engineer a path to it. And the only way to do that is to figure out where you are today. That's the Google Maps thing. And you need to calculate your seller's discretionary earnings. And the book will help you do that and maybe get to like a blue belt level. You're definitely not a black belt. You're still going to get your butt kicked by a teenager that has their black belt. So you should, in my view, get some help. I don't care if it's with Quiet Light or anybody else. There are lots of folks that will do it like us at absolutely no charge. It's part of our business model. We help and we help and we help. And then we, try to win your business just by helping. There's no contracts. It's just what we do. But those are the first two steps, set, dollars, date, feeling, go, and then figure out where they are today.
I have a question on that. So you were talking about getting traction, getting out there, getting your first sales.
Yeah.
What about, I don't want to go too deep on it because I don't want to necessarily scare people away, but what about the initial structure of your business? Does it matter? S Corp, LLC, solopreneur, like should they be even thinking about that? Or is that something they can do when the plane's gone down the right way a while?
In regards to selling the business, the only one I'd probably push people away from is being a C Corp, because you're going to get, double taxation. It's going to be much harder to sell. And these are asset sales, not stock sales for the most part, right? Anything I say, it's not 100% of the time, right? So probably 98% of the time, these are asset sales, which means that, Richie, if I'm buying your business, you get to keep the empty shell of the corporation. I'm just taking over all of the assets. I'm, taking over your online store. I'm taking over your seller account, if it's Amazon or eBay or whatever it might be. I'm taking over your relationships to manufacturers. I'm taking over your VAs, if you have them, things of that nature, your trademark. I own them now, but you have an empty shell of a business with a bank account tied to it. I'm not taking the corporation. So you could be a solopreneur with a bank account that's separate from your personal bank account. That's really, really key. Or you could be an LLC or an S Corp. Those would be, the first three choices. The last would be a C Corp. Yeah, I wouldn't want to do that if you can avoid it at all possibilities. Make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I like what you said about the, with setting the goal. Yes, there's this idea of a number, but there's actually a date attached to it because, we talk with a lot of entrepreneurs and a lot of people starting their own business, and it's, yes, I want $1 million, right? Is that $1 million in cash? Is that, and is that when, right? Because it's a very big difference of, I want $1 million someday, there's not a whole lot of reason to really get after that new marketing campaign today because your $1 million is in the future. But if it's by Q2 of 2023, well, you should really get after it. Or, likely you need to get after that particular project you need to finish in order to get there. So
yeah,
that's important.
I love that you said, is it cash and what do I want out of that deal? Because on my screensaver or my screen display, I have my goal and I have the type of deal structure that I want, because I know deal structures now, obviously. And in my case, I've laid it out in, 3 or 4 different options, and it may end up being 2 of those. And so understanding not only the dollar amount, setting the date, and don't discount the feeling, Jesse, because it's really important, but then figuring out types of deal structures, which is chapter 15. In most cases, if we're talking about a business that's less than $1 million, it's going to be a cash sale. In most cases, you're going to get all cash, folks, right? And then you're going to, there may be a small holdback. So let's say you sell the business for $1 million or anything less than $1 million. It's going to be these days probably all cash. But maybe there'll be $50,000 held back in escrow for training and transition purposes only, and then released. And so what that means is when somebody sells the business, they're selling the business and they're moving on to their new life after training and transition. They're not going to work for the new buyer of the business. They're not a consultant for the new owner unless they want to be, and that's a separate deal. They're moving on. But first, before they get that extra that last $50,000, they need to help with the training and transition, right? I can't buy your business and then just go run it. Thank you. Give me an SOP and I'm good to go. I just give you $1 million, Jesse. I want you to stick around a little bit and help me. And so in the asset purchase agreement, in the letter of intent first, and then the asset purchase agreement, there's going to be a clause that says, you're going to help me with training and the transition of the business for up to 40 hours over the first 90 days after closing. That's the typical language. It's always up to and over. So we're not set to 40 hours. Most people never use the 40. But then that last bit of cash will be released. It's in escrow. It's not in my pocket. It's in escrow. And then it's released automatically. So in most cases, it'll be all cash. I guess my point for under $1 million.
Yeah, I think that's a good, maybe to kind of help frame it for, sub $1 million deal right now, which is where a lot of equity merchants are going to be at. Okay, so you put together a package, you kind of get it out there on the market. You get some people that are interested in the business and looking at it. The deal generally looks like, it's all cash. Do people use an escrow to transfer over the domain and various pieces of the assets they're transferring over? And then this training is that's pretty standard now.
Pretty standard, yeah.
What's the verification for that? Like, how do people, how does the escrow company say, yes, you did indeed fulfill the requirements?
They don't. It's between the buyer and seller.
Okay.
And only once in, $100 million worth of transactions have I seen it go sideways. And it's, it was a small business. It was like 175,000 and 25,000 was held in escrow. And the buyers of the business flew from Massachusetts to Texas pre-LOI or after LOI and due diligence to meet with the owner of the business, met with her kids, absolutely loved her. They got along great. They flew back to Massachusetts, closed the transaction. She disappeared, just stopped communicating. There was a tornado in the area and we thought, oh no. And I got the sheriff to go out to the house and no trees down, no nothing. Bicycles all upright in the yard. She just chose to disappear off the face of the earth in regards to that transaction. So she did not get her $25,000 released because the attorney said she's not fulfilling that up to over 40 in any way, shape, or form. So we're both, comfortable releasing the money back to the buyer of the business. That's the only time ever. So it's really, these are, you sign a formal letter of intent. It's a non-binding letter of intent, contingent on due diligence, which is the verification of the numbers and other things. But the asset purchase agreement lays it out. And then, it's a matter of, well, we're there and it's just automatically released from escrow and the buyer and seller will just agree. Okay, go ahead and email the escrow agent, which is usually an attorney holding escrow, to release the funds. That's simple, not complicated at all. So, what I don't want people to do is to overcomplicate the potential exit. They've just simply got to set that goal with those 3 different things, calculate the discretionary earnings, which can be tough if they don't have any accounting, but then really more than anything else at this point, shift their mindset from an entrepreneur, which they are right now, to an exitpreneur, which, means I'm selling this business or I've sold a business and I'm going to do it again, because the fact of the matter is that, for physical product business owners, the vast majority of the money they make in the business comes the day that they sell it, right? And when they realize that, and realize that now in advance, they get excited. Now, I can sell it in 24 months. I can grow this and sell it for $1 million. During that time, they're taking nothing out of the business, I promise you, because it's growing so rapidly if they sell for $1 million.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, sell for $1 million, that's a pretty good deal. And they learn so much that the next time they do it, they're doing it with cash in the bank. They're debt free, hopefully, but they're smarter and wiser and can build a better business and do that again down the road. And that's the definition of an exitpreneur, is that they're not just an entrepreneur grinding it out every day, but they're an exitpreneur. They're moving towards that eventual exit, or they've done it before because they realize so much of the money from the business that they're running, which is probably their most valuable asset, right? I know right now, Quiet Light's my most valuable asset, right? Most often the businesses that I've been running are my most valuable asset. And when you don't run it like that and understand the numbers, you got to say to yourself, or I want to say to them, what the hell are you doing? Come on, this is so important. Pay attention to these details. But it's hard to get through to everybody. Not everybody wants to hear that.
I think that's where your third piece there about going over the feelings is so important.
Oh, yeah.
Right? On so many levels, just the obvious one of, analogy of a word that we say, it's sticks and stones or break your bones, blah, 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 right? The kids all have heard that a billion times. Well, I sometimes even question that one. The word without the feeling is just a word. You can tell when someone puts that feeling, how many, love you, babe, as you're leaving. If the feeling's not there, it's like the word is the pin and the feeling is the iron bar that can drive it through. And so everything from the tough days that you referred to the motivation during the tough times, and maybe it's not even with the business, maybe there's just a tough time in life and you're like, well, that's why I'm doing this business. And just thinking all those feelings out, I think are unbelievably important. And I'm glad you included that in there. Something else you reminded me of was, like, I think of athletes that they put all this stuff into that being their thing. And then we all know that the world of a professional athlete's, their lifespan is pretty short. Now, not the lifespan themselves, but of
As
their,
an athlete,
as an athlete. Yeah. And so, if you don't think about what you're going to be doing after and what means something to you after, you're not going to probably be another athlete in something else. But in this particular, in the world of e-commerce, I really like that you added that in, especially on a platform like Equid, where it's like, oh, wow, I really love this. I know I know now how to run this business, but I didn't really like that product as much as I thought, or I found this new thing that I want even more. But now you have that knowledge, the skill set, and the feelings to help tie it all together. So yeah, I really want to just reiterate that part with the feelings there. I think it's super important.
I appreciate that. It's huge. And there's always going to be an after or an exit, right? Like an NFL football player, right? NFL stands for not for long, right? With an entrepreneur running their business, you are going to exit one way or another. You're not running that thing forever. You are going to die. I'm sorry to tell you, or you're going to have a fight with your partner and you're going to want to split and move on because you're doing most of the work and they're doing nothing. And you don't want to keep, funding their retirement while you're doing all the work, or you're going to get a divorce. Half of you are, and that's going to be painful and awful. And somebody might be fighting for the business. So you want to have all that. I don't want to say prepared, right? People hate preparing for anything. Get yourself trained up like that professional athlete. So you're fit, you're in great shape. So if you decide to wake up someday and say, I'm out, you're prepared, man. You can get out. You don't have to go, I'm out, but I got 5 more months of work to do. And I got to do the stuff that I hate because I didn't do it in the first place because I hate it. You just got to train. You got to focus on those things that you got to put in place, because we talk about it, what buyers want in one of the chapters. I can't remember what chapter it is right now, but it's so important. You got to be able to figure out, what buyers want and put your business in a position. And part of that shifting your mindset from entrepreneur to exitpreneur is not thinking about yourself anymore. You're not running this business just to make money. That's what I did initially. And I bet it's what the two of you did initially as well. And I see a little bit of gray on both of your chins. And that comes from experience and wisdom. Yeah, a lot of gray on Richie's, just a little on yours, Jesse. Mine's entirely gray these days. But what comes with that badge of honor there on your chin is experience and wisdom to know that when you pay less attention to how much money is in it for you, and how many people you're helping with your product or service or podcast or platform, lo and behold, you actually make more money, right? So if people can focus on just building a great business for a great buyer to take over at a great price someday, they're actually going to make more money than if they only focus on growing a business that's going to profit them as much as possible.
Yeah.
That just comes with age and wisdom, and it's kind of corny, I know, but it's true.
No,
yeah.
I don't think it's corny. I think it even helps you. Maybe you had this date, you wanted to sell it. Maybe you love it more than ever and you don't want to sell it, but at least you have a business that's running solid and you put all the right things in place. So now even if you don't want to exit, you have a better, stronger chance of lasting. So
you can go away on vacation for 2 weeks, not check your email when you come back. You're not inundated with 6,000 emails, right?
Yeah.
You got an assistant that's doing that for you.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the goal, right? I think, and by the way, I always get a VA for everybody listening, which I have. Let's break down those numbers a little bit. Richie's the feeling guy. I'm more on the numbers guy here. So, because I know what people are thinking, where, you have a business, it's a struggle. It's, sometimes you're ready to quit, but use an example of, somebody's got $300,000 in revenue. Ideally, a product business, 60K is the profit, likely, probably under that. You might be
let me just change your language. Discretionary earnings. Call it discretionary earnings. Yep. Get into that.
Yep. Okay. And we'll come back to that as well, because that's a kind of a term strictly in the e-com world and the business selling world. But yeah, so you're making somewhere between 30, 60K, but it's not awesome. There's days that are really bad, but you had mentioned that half of the money comes from selling. So
more than
So you're doing this business and some days it's not awesome. You're making, some money, but if you keep the eyes on the prize here of this is some money you're making now, but the prize is selling this thing, you gotta take money out at some point. Right.
Yeah. And the numbers thing, Jesse, is so important. It doesn't have to be complicated to understand them. If we just say that on that $300,000 business, there's 15% discretionary earnings, that's 45 grand a year. Mm-hmm. That's not $45,000 in cash flow for a physical products business, because if you've got $20,000 in inventory, you really only have $25,000 in cash flow.
Yeah.
Okay. But you've got $45,000 in discretionary earnings because you've got your inventory set up on accrual accounting, the way that it should be done and the way that it will be sold on. We can always flip it to accrual after the fact, but that knowing that you're building something that has value. And this is where there's a couple of chapters on valuations and what brings value, plummets value, and what the formula is, which is kind of critical to understand the basic formula of how these businesses are valued. But then chapter 11 will really help you firm up that discretionary earnings and calculate it. And in some cases, blow your mind a little bit in terms of, what's an add back and what's not an add back and what the hell an add back is. And we don't want to get too deep into the weeds there, but I've worked with people that are selling businesses, businesses are valued at $5 million, but they don't understand the basics of add backs, that it's an owner operated business. They're paying themselves $200,000. That's called an add back. So you've got net income of, $250,000 after you run a profit and loss. their $200,000 gets added to that 250. So now they're at 450. One very clean, simple example of an ad back. There's 17 other examples in the book, level 1, level 2, level 3. Level 3 is complicated. We don't want to go there, but it's the stuff you got to dig deep and focus on. In fact, can I give you an example of one? And I think everybody will understand this. So I was on a LinkedIn lunch AMA kind of thing with the CEO of one of the aggregators, right? One of these companies that are buying FBA businesses. And I had to really just sort of toe the line here in terms of what I could say, because these guys are buying up FBA businesses, and I'm out here making sure people are not selling them at, too low of a price. That's what the book is for, right? It's like, if you're going to sell on your own, buy the book so you can make sure you're selling it, right? And so this is live, by the way. And so I'm like, and let's just say his name is Steve. It's not, but so I said, Steve, you guys, like, for instance, you guys subscribe to Helium 10 and Jungle Scout, right? He goes, of course we do. I said, okay, so if I'm an FBA seller, and I'm definitely going to sell to you, and I've put my P&L together for you, it just makes sense that I can do an ad back for Helium 10, my Helium 10 and Jungle Scout expenses. And let's say it's about $300 a month. That's $3,600 a year, because those expenses are not going to carry forward to you because you already have subscriptions to those, right? And he's shaking his head up and down regretfully, going, "You son of a bitch." Yeah. And because you've got $3,600 in ad backs. If this is the exact situation, if you're selling to an aggregator, and they're buying the business at, let's just say simple, 3 times, right? 3 times 3,600. Quick math, anyone? What are we looking at?
10 grandish.
10 grand, $10,800, right? That's going to pay for my son's room and board at NC State. These are where the numbers really matter. When you drill down to, I'm getting 2% cash back monies, and that's $400 a month, and that's $4,800 a year times, holy cow, that's $15,000 between the Helium 10 and Jungle Scout and cash back money. That pays for a year of tuition at NC State. Those are the things that really, really, really matter. And that's all in that, getting to know the numbers part of it that some people hate. So hopefully I've done a good enough job in chapter 11 where you feel like we're having a beer together and talking about these numbers and going through it. And you're going, either you hate me because you just sold a business and you missed out on so many ad backs. You're like, all right. I feel like an idiot. I'm going to do this right next time. Or you love me because you're like, in some cases, I've had people that come to me and that actually same mastermind for the guy that didn't know his salary was an ad back and he's doing $5 million in revenue, where these guys thought, look, Joe, we're exhausted. We've been running this business for 4 years and we just don't feel like it has much value. We just don't think there's a good exit for us, but we wanted to get your view. It turns out that their business was worth like $6 million. They thought it was worth like $1 million, and there's 2 of them sharing it. And after taxes and fees, they didn't, for 4 years worth of work, they didn't think there was going to be much there, but it was worth like $6 million because they just didn't understand certain aspects of it. And that knowledge, when you have it, can be mind-blowing and motivating in ways that you could never comprehend until you have that knowledge. And I couldn't reach enough people, Jesse, Rich. So that's why, I put it there, but still they got to read they've got to make the decision to buy the book, or in this case, we're going to give away these free chapters, and then they actually have to read them, right? And pay attention to them. But when they do, and I see this often when I do valuations over the years where people are tired and worn out and feel like they need to move on, and we go through the process and they're like, so if I just do this, that, and the other thing, and I can hang on for a year, it's going to be worth, $2 million. Yeah. Based upon the growth, they get really excited and motivated. And so some people they disappear altogether because they're still running and they're happy, and they move that goalpost. And, I meet them at events and things are great, but it's their business to get to do what they want with it. But if I could stand up, what is it called? When you're in the street preaching to people, is that a soapbox, right?
Yeah, sure. Soapbox.
If I could get on my soapbox, this is what I'd be saying, just shaking them by the shoulders. And this is your most valuable asset, but you're paying no attention to the basic details of it. You need to understand this and what it's worth, and set a target goal to get out, because you are going to get out someday, no matter what you think.
So let's say they get your book, they follow it. I know it's going to be different for everyone and the numbers are going to change. So this is just for right now.
Yeah.
Let's get 3 numbers. Someone who's just starting and they need to put their numbers, their date, and their feelings. Again, I know it's going to be different for everyone. The frame I would love to hear from you is, what are 3 different levels of revenue that seem to be hot at this point in time for acquirers of businesses, right? 100,000, a million, 10 million. Like, is there some sort of numbers that help them set the number, right? Because some people are literally listening to this podcast for the first time. They just signed up and they're just starting their e-commerce business, and it's just a number they're picking. That might help some people if they know that, maybe people are trying to acquire $1 million business because they know there's enough traction, but they know they probably could do a lot better than this person's doing because they don't have a big enough team or 10 million or whatever. So I'll stop with the numbers, but do you get my question?
Absolutely. It's a great question. And I'm going to say that it's not the total revenue number that's the goal. It's the total discretionary earnings. That's the goal, because you could have 2 businesses doing $1 million in revenue, but one of you are only, sitting at 5% profit where the other's at 20. So they're not going to be valued equally. All right. So we're talking really about what buyers want, Richie, right? And they look at 4 things, and they've come up with these over the years, and they kept coming up. So we finally just defined them, and it's risk, growth, transferability, and documentation. Those are the 4 things that they look at. And what you're talking about in terms of values and numbers is the risk side of it. It first actually starts with age, not size. The age of the business matters dramatically. And that sort of, I feel comfortable at this amount of years is 2 years, 24 months, right? We try to, get people to stick around in their business for at least 24 months, because at that point, buyers are not punishing them for age. If it gets to 18 months, instead of a 3.5 multiple, you may only get a 3 multiple. And if your business is doing $100,000 in discretionary earnings, that's a difference of $50,000. So that matters. Age matters. And then when you get into size definitely matters in terms of the stability of a business, right? So if you've got a business, but if you've got 2 businesses that are 5 years old, and one business is doing 500,000 in total revenue, and another is doing 5 million in total revenue, both at the same size, the business is doing 5 million, believe it or not, is less of a risk to buy. Why? Because they're larger, their customer base is probably more diverse. They've got more SKUs. They don't have a single hero SKU in the electronic space that's, going to be obsolete in 12 months. And it's just a less risk-averse business. So they're going to pay a higher multiple for it. And when you get to the point of, multiple breaks, and this is, the question that really I get a lot. At what point does my multiple go up? So businesses are sold as a multiple of discretionary earnings. If you're sub 100,000, you're at a certain, value range. And I can tell you ranges right now, but only, if everybody hears me first, that no 2 businesses are alike. And just because Joe said it doesn't necessarily apply to your business. So I'm going to give you, broad ranges. If you're at 100,000 in profit, discretionary earnings, or sub 100,000 discretionary, you're going to be somewhere in the, if all things are good in the business and it's growing, it's not a single SKU in the electronic space that will be obsolete in 12 months, you're probably going to be in that 2.5 to 3.5 range. Very broad range. And on the high side, you got to be 24 months old. You got to all sorts of other things. If you're in the $100,000 to $500,000 range in discretionary earnings, you're gonna bump to that, call it 3 to 4 range. You see how there's overlap there still with the lower range? 500 to $1 million, you're going to be in that 3.5 to 5 range. At $1 million in discretionary earnings, you're going to be in that 4.5 plus range. It all overlaps because no 2 businesses are alike, and it's not simply discretionary earnings times a multiple equals the value of your business, because there's risk associated with it. There are growth trends. upward trends, downward trends. Sometimes there's transferability issues, right? So before we get to transferability, if your business is growing year over year steadily, it's actually a good time to sell. If revenue is flat from last year or down from last year, I'm sorry, but I really want you to hang on. Hang on until we see an uptick, even if it's only 4 months. The last 4 months are up over the 4 months of the same period last year, because that's going to make buyers feel good. Even if you just screwed up a bit and you fixed it, that shows how resilient your business is. You just took your eye off the ball. They're going to like that. They're going to be like, okay, you just screwed up. I see what you did. You spent too much money on advertising. You reeled it back in. So the growth is important. If you wait until you're tired out, worn, and exhausted and don't love the business, growth is going to decline, and you're going to be punished in 2 ways. One, you're not making as much money. 2, your multiple is going to go down pretty dramatically. Right? This is probably getting way too into the weeds. Transferability has to go without saying. If the assets that drive the revenue of the business are not transferable, guess what? You don't have a sellable business. Right? If you're the name and face of the business and you drive the traffic and the sales, you have a sellable business, but you are going to need to stick around for a while. You're going to have to be the name and face for a longer transition and training period. You won't have to grind it out every day and order inventory and do these other things. I'll do that for you, but I need you to be the name and face until they get used to me or the caricature that I put in place, because I don't want to have the same problem that you have when I sell a business in 3 years. And that last piece we've already beat to death, which is the documentation. If you don't have a P&L to show me where I can't figure out your discretionary earnings, I can't tell you where you are today, how close or how far you are from the goal. So do that first, please.
Yeah. No, there's some good ones. And I think the most important one there is the growing business, right? Like don't sell if you're over it, don't let the business fade, because that's an easy one. Just like try to find some sort of peak. You're never going to time it perfectly, I'm sure, but like, don't wait till business has went down and you think your income has went down a little bit. Well, the amount you're going to sell it for just went down dramatically, right? Yeah. Like that's a easy one.
And just forget, if you just set those aside, one of the most important things you can do as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, eventual exitpreneur, is understand your own limitations and your own passions, and don't promote yourself to your level of incompetence. And if you're not passionate about what you do, I promise you're not going to excel at it. So this, gentleman that, desperately needs to sell now, right? The one that did $7.5 million in revenue last year. He wasn't passionate about the business. Sad, and a great business, very profitable. If he had bitten the bullet and sold it in 2019, he probably would have had a $10 million exit. He didn't love it then, and he was going to hire people and put them in place and have them do the work. He hired the wrong people. They blew up the advertising costs. They bought inventory that was specific to the calendar year 2020. Guess what? It's 2021. That's $1 million of inventory that you are never going to sell. And now he has a business that's not worth a whole lot. He was never passionate about it to begin with. He happened to step into something that just took off, and it was wonderful. And he could have sold and changed his life forever. And instead, what he's doing now is living in a relative's apartment because that's all they can afford. He's sad, desperate, running this business all alone by himself, and has to go to a relative to beg for money, to buy inventory, to order it now for Q4, or he has no business because nobody's going to give him money because it's, it's so tragically bad for 2021. So you got to make sure, more than anything else, and I've done this way too many times in my life, I bet the two of you have as well, make sure you don't promote yourself to your own level of incompetence, because I promise you things are not going to go well. Know what your limitations are. If you can take the business to $1 million in revenue, but you can't take it to 10, or don't want to do the things that you need to take it to 10, sell it. Let somebody else do it, and then bootstrap another one and do it again. That's the exitpreneur mentality.
Yeah, I think that's it's good because people think that this one business is all you can ever do, right? But once you've learned the skills, and we've talked about this in other pods, like if you learn how to do Google advertising, Facebook advertising, if you learn how e-commerce works in general, Amazon, whatever, you figure these things out, like you just plug in another product. And the next one, you're going to learn from what you did the first time and say, okay, I'm definitely steering clear of this particular type of product. I hated it, but now I have a little pile of cash. I have the skills. I know who to hire. I have my accountant, like all that kind of stuff makes it's a life skill. It's not a business that you are married to forever.
You're not figuring it out for the first time. You've already been there. You've done it. You're going to grow it much more profitably in a lot shorter period of time. So by the time you hit that 24-month mark on this second business, it's going to be larger than the first because the learning curve was so much shorter. And you're not, racking up credit card charges to buy inventory because you don't need to anymore because you were able to seed the business with money from the last sale. It's peaceful. It's awesome. It's on the homepage of the Exitpreneur website, Janine and Brian are on there. A couple I sold their business, and I took clips from we did a 20-minute short film on them, and I took 60 seconds of it. And one of the things that Brian says in there is just, it's almost like a deep satisfaction that you hear in his voice. He says, life is really good right now. I'm like, that's just exactly how everybody wants to feel, right? Life is really good. Right? They actually sold their business timing wise, couldn't have been better. They sold their business in, it was for 7 figures in the low to mid 7-figure range. The money hit their bank account. I think it was on whatever, I want to say March 27th, 2020, whatever day it was in the state of Massachusetts where they locked everything down with COVID. That's when the money hit their bank account. They were like, whew, and the market tanked. They're like, okay, this is good. All right, good. Life is really good right now. He just sent me a picture of their new swimming pool that they put in. And again, life is really good for them. And the kids' college is paid for. And they didn't stop. They've got 2 more businesses that they've launched since then. And they're doing amazing with it. So
life's really good because e-commerce picked up during that time too. So
life is really good. And they bought, a couple of Massachusetts, but they bought a property in Florida that they do Airbnb to. And anytime it gets cold in Massachusetts, they go down to Florida. They even bought a Jeep that they're renting out through, I think it's Truro or something like that. It's just great. And that's the kind of life that look, when I started doing this over a decade ago, I was sitting at a table at PubCon in New Orleans with a group of guys afterwards, people, men and women. And someone said, so Joe, how do you like brokering? I'm like, honestly, I love it. It's the best part of it for me is making a difference in people's lives. And the guy sitting next to me said, oh, that's a load of crap. You're just making the money. I'm like, strangely enough, what I said then holds true. We make lifelong friends with what I do, even if they don't sell their business. I've been to events where people come up and, I chatted with them a year or 2 or 3 ago, and they tell me what a difference I made in their lives. And that's worth, all the money in the world. And that's what comes with age, right? Never when I was 29 years old would I thought, I just want to make a difference in people's lives. I wasn't that good of a person. Hopefully my kids are, that's what they want to do, make a difference in people's lives. Now, I want to do that. And I think that this information that you guys are doing, the way you guys help people with your platform and honestly, the book, I think can really make an enormous difference in people's lives.
Awesome. I love to hear that. Yeah. So I'm glad we get to help spread the word as well. So for people out there, please check out the book. Because I think that's not something we talk about as much. We talk a little bit more about the grind and getting your business going. We don't really talk about the exit all that often, but you don't want to be grinding forever. The goal is to have that satisfaction that you talk about where, $1 million in the bank and peace, right? Like that sounds fantastic right now. So yeah. So Richie, any last questions here that we didn't ask?
Well, I could talk with you forever, Joe. We definitely do. You coming out for traffic and conversion or any of those things? We're in San Diego, so
yeah, I'm not making it, but half the team's going to be there. Awesome. So we're actually, if you subscribe to the Quiet Light newsletter, you'll get an email from Chris in no time at all he's our CMO. We actually rented, I want to call it a yacht, but it's probably not a yacht, but we rented a yacht that will hold up to 50 people. And those are the, he's going to send an email out. We're doing a special invite, but just to get together and, do something special and meet with people at traffic and conversion, because we don't have a booth. We actually had it booked pre-pandemic, and all of us were going to meet together for the first time in person. Our entire team never been in the same place at the same time. And that's what we were doing. But this year it's not going to happen either. So,
yeah. Well, awesome. Yeah. Now we got a little hint there. We, we'll head to the yacht, boat, whatever it is. Yeah. Sounds good.
It's not like a tugboat. I saw the bill. I guarantee you.
Yeah. It better not be. Yeah.
That's much better than a booth anyway.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, Joe, pleasure having you on. Hope everybody out there listening gathered something from it. Joe, where do people look at Quiet Light, find information about you or the book, etc.?
Great question. So they can find anything about the book at exitpreneur.io and put out by exitpreneur.io. I will give the 3 chapters we talked about. I'll give the links to you guys. You've got them in the show notes. It'll be about identifying all of your ad backs, FBA roll-up companies and what they're all about, and then structuring the deal and negotiating the deal. And then they can find me on LinkedIn, of course, Joe Valley, or visit quietlight.com to learn about what we do, how we do it. And there's a lot of good information there on the blog about building a business that you can sell that will be for value that changes your life there as well. It's all free.
All right. Perfect. Joe, really appreciate it. Richie, fun as always. Everybody out there listening, you know what to do. Get out there and make it happen. Bye-bye.
Hey, this is Jesse and Rich. We want to let you know we really appreciate you listening.
We hope you find the tips we give you helpful for growing your business.
You can find all of our past episodes and a lot more useful stuff at equid.com/podcast.
And also, check us out on your favorite podcasting platform like Apple Podcast or Stitcher. And make sure you never miss an episode by subscribing.
Be sure to let us know what you think by rating and reviewing so we can serve you better.
So subscribe on your favorite platform.
And come join our community. Check out the